Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The Story of G.I. Joe from 1945, and this continues my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can. This film was what Wellman considered one of his few films that he thought were his best films, and that was this and Wings. But originally he didn't want to direct this film. Ernie Pyle, who's a World War II war correspondent, he was a Pulitzer Prize winning war correspondent, which he wrote a column and he wrote from the front lines with the infantry, and they were collected in books, and this film is based on Here Is Your War. Of course, since it was very popular and it was a book, Hollywood wanted to make a movie about it, and Ernie Pyle originally wanted John Huston. John Huston wasn't available, but after that they turned to Wellman, and Wellman didn't really want to do it. Wellman was a flyer, and the infantry were people he really never understood when he was in World War I, and he didn't feel like he really knew the subject matter well enough to do it. They really campaigned really hard, even trying to give gifts to his kids, which didn't go over very well with Wellman, and eventually he came around and he did it, and he became very good friends with Ernie Pyle. It works out because Ernie Pyle has, I don't know his writing very well, but at least in this film there's a real working man's attitude to World War II. That was pretty much the Wellman protagonist, is very much a working man, and he likes doing male friendship kind of relationships, very strong male friendships, and there's a lot of that in World War II as well, especially in this film. Most of the reasons he said he didn't want to do it seemed a little silly to me. I mean, it seems so perfect when you really think about it. There's a part in the film where an airplane flies over them and they goes, "Oh, those flyers," and they make fun of the guy, and that's obviously Wellman taking the piss at himself. This was made in 1944. It came out in June 1945, and it came out before the end of the war. It doesn't really have a beginning. I mean, it has a beginning, it begins and ends technically, but it doesn't have a regular kind of beginning and ending. It feels like part of an ongoing story. This film really has a feeling that the war is not over and it's going to keep going, and we don't really know when the ending of it is. Wellman, he could really be a studio director, but he could also be a lot more creative than that and do a lot of moodier, darker things. And this film is a lot moodier and darker than you'd expect from most World War II movies. It's about a certain battle, it's about a mission, it's about a certain particular thing, and this is just them going from one thing to the other thing. You get these kind of everyday goings on of the guys. One guy's trying to fix a record player because he got sent a record of his son saying "Hello Daddy." Another guy is trying to get laid with all the girls in the villages. This other guy gets married while he's there. It's just very kind of almost ordinary, everyday kind of stuff. And that's really the film. The film's just about these guys, and there are battle sequences, very impressive battle sequences. The film's not just about them, it's kind of more about the men than it is the battles. Wellman really wanted to keep this closest to Ernie Pyle's writing. I'm not as familiar with it, but to my understanding, he really cared about the men who were fighting in the infantry, and this film really is about them. He can sometimes let go of structure and just do what the film needs to. He was very stubborn, and when he talks about being selected for this film, they liked him because he was stubborn and he would take on the film in a different kind of way. And because he was so stubborn, sometimes he could take these artistic leaps that a lot of directors at the time couldn't, and he could really break free from Hollywood. I mean, it is a Hollywood film, you have big movie stars in it, and Wellman is a Hollywood director, certainly, but this doesn't feel as Hollywood as some of his other stuff, and it feels a little more theater-esque, much like the Oxbow incident. It feels like his regular documentary style, but he shot it like black and white World War II documentary photography also. The stark black and white of it makes it feel a lot realer. He had worked on World War II propaganda with the Thunderbirds, but it feels like he really wants to get in there and really show you what it's like. He really stripped this film down to what this film really needed to be, and I really feel like I'm with these guys, and because I have to relate to them, I really know them. But at the same time, he has, because there's always new guys coming in, there's always guys dying, he has that kind of replaceable feel to it where there's certain guys you are with throughout the entire film, but there's other guys who die while it's going on and then get replaced and so forth. As much as there's certain characters like Don Darrow and the captain and the lieutenant captain Billy Walker and obviously Ernie Pyle and Sergeant Wernicke, there's other characters who they get killed and it moves on, and it's interesting what Wellman does show you and has you deal with, but also kind of moves past. Wellman's also called very sentimental. His films, they often get called that, and I think they are sentimental, but not sentimental in the way you think of most filmmakers with sentimentality, because the way he used sentimentality is to show how the world doesn't really care about it. It moves on from it. You have to move on from it. Life keeps going. The Story of G.I. Joe shows that far darker than I've seen him show it before. He shows it sentimental when you're in the moment of it, but most of his films, as they go on, it shows kind of a lack of sentimentality. There's no plot to it, and having that and how dark it is, I'm surprised it played as well as it did at the time. It's like he played in the code very well. I mean, it's been going on 10 years since the code has been instated and all that, but a lot of the violence, more gory things he shows off screen. One point he makes a joke about it in that flyer scene I mentioned earlier that went by so fast you couldn't see it and you don't see the plane. He does that a couple other times where like someone gets shot and it's off camera and you don't even see it. It's just the music clues you in, you see these guys looking. And that's something he did in the pre-code era. He likes like withholding from the audience. It almost makes those moments far more dramatic if you did see them get shot, because you're imagining what happened. This is a big film for Robert Mitchum. It helped him become a star. He got his first and only, I think, Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. I've seen this film many times, and the first time I saw it, I really was following Ernie Pyle, played by Burgess Meredith, and Robert Mitchum's character of Lieutenant Colonel Bill Walker. Burgess Meredith does a great performance as Ernie Pyle. He kind of Hollywoods him up, but in the best ways that Burgess Meredith can, and I think kind of nails him. Burgess Meredith does kind of give him kind of like an actor's sheen to him, almost lightens the mood from everybody else that Wellman's playing with, almost making this a softer blow for audiences with Burgess Meredith's performance. And then the times I watched it before I reviewed this, I started following Sergeant Steve Wernicke, played by Freddie Steele. And I have to say, I actually am starting to really like the Freddie Steele character in this film. I like his whole arc with the record with his son. I think he's a great character, kind of almost like reminds me of Wallace Beery, who Wellman worked with earlier. He has just a great presence about him. There are certain people like Don Darrow and Murphy who are also good, but I can't get Freddie Steele out of my head. The past couple times I've seen this film, it's like I almost follow him more than I followed Mitchum and Burgess Meredith. Like, I've followed them too much, maybe. Maybe that's my problem. I've seen this movie too many times. So my mind is going to Freddie Steele's character. But I don't think he gets enough acclaim for his performance in this. I think he was a boxer, and I was surprised to find out he was a boxer, and he didn't make a lot of films, apparently. I thought he was actually a fine actor. He seemed to have a really good character actor approach to his scene. Like, I thought he was in a ton of movies, but apparently isn't. Also, there is an appearance by Dorothy Coonan, Wellman's wife. This is her, I think, her first appearance since Wild Boys. It's certainly her first appearance in a Wellman film since Wild Boys, where she gets married in kind of the rubble of this church. It's interesting to see her 10 years later. She looks a bit different, but not too different. I like all the scenes Wellman does in the church, and especially the action scenes, but as well as the wedding in the church. He uses the church imagery very well. Anytime he's using a set, I feel like he got the most out of it. The documentary style of this film, it reminds me of later what Spielberg would do in Saving Private Ryan, and even kind of what Kubrick would do in Full Metal Jacket. I'm sure Spielberg's seen some Wellman. I'm curious now, the more Wellman I've seen after reading about how Kubrick loved Roxy Hart, if Kubrick was somewhat of a Wellman fan, or at least a few of his films. The thing I've always liked about Story of G.I. Joe, it's kind of an everyday, everyman's approach to World War II. Most of the time, World War II films, especially now, are really about a mission or about a purpose. There's a reason for them going on. And this is just trying to convey World War II war correspondent, but not even his full run as a correspondent. He unfortunately died 2 months before this film premiered, and it really reflects someone who's been in the trenches for a while and showing this ongoing war. I mean, World War II went on for years. Wellman had the audacity to be like, no, let's make this like his writing, let's make this move like a real, how these guys really lived, and show it from their perspective. And I think Wellman really likes showing things from a distinct perspective and being honest to the character. And like, he didn't want to do it because he didn't feel he knew them well enough, like he could do a good enough job. Even when he accepted it, felt like he couldn't do a good enough job. But I think he does a great job, because all the things he did from his pre-code stuff, where he learned how to do kind of a working man's film and show how important work was to these people's identity, showing it from a soldier's perspective and how that's all their life was. I think Wellman could do that very well, and he brought a lot of intelligence to it. He was a really smart guy, and with a director's ego, and using it in the best sense, at least when it came to the what was on screen. I don't know what he was like on set, but made a really well-defined classic World War II movie. And it's one that, like, every time there's a Memorial Day thing on TCM, I always see them play it. Whenever I hear of best World War II movies, I always see this mentioned. This and his other film, Battleground, which I'll be reviewing later. This one has always been at the top of my Wellman film list. I like how distinct he made it, how personal, and yet how anti-Hollywood it wasn't, but still being a Hollywood film. It doesn't respect the Hollywood structure whatsoever. It's not really a mainstream movie, but he still made it. Ernie Pyle was very big at the time, so he made it like Ernie Pyle's writing. Again, I'm going off of what I've read. I like the feel of it. I like that it's just this ongoing drudgery to what they're doing, and Wellman really showing what it's like to be in the infantry and do that day after day. Sometimes I think about, when I hear about World War II, when these guys were off for 2-3 years, like, what was that like to just put your life on hold and go out there and experience those things? And I get more of a sense from Story of G.I. Joe than I've ever got from like a film that's about a battle or about a mission or about a, you know, saving some guy or something like that. I really get a sense I'm with these guys. It's a unique World War II film, but I think it's the only kind of World War II film that Wellman could have made, and it shows him as a director probably better than almost all of his films. It shows all of his kind of personal trademarks and tricks that he's accomplished at this time, showing the best of him as a director. That's always kind of the thing about war pictures. It's supposed to be this grand showmanship as a director, or that's kind of the mythos behind them. And I think Wellman did that, but he did that in his usual unpretentious way and showed these guys in a very unpretentious way. But by showing them in an unpretentious way, he gave them that realness that Ernie Pyle did. It gave them that notoriety that the infantry wouldn't really get. And I think that's something Wellman liked, the underdogs, Wellman liked the everyman, and Wellman could portray that very well. And that's why I think this has always been probably one of Wellman's favorite films, because it portrays the things he liked to make films about almost better than most of his films. So if you have seen The Story of G.I. Joe and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And my next William Wellman film will be The Yellow Sky. I hope to see you then, and thank you for watching.